So we do have a special guest with us in the studio today.
Exactly. We have in the studio to talk a lot more about today's topic. We have Ms. FARAH ROSLEY, Malaysia tax leader from the ENY, Ernst & Young Tax Consultants Sdn Bhd. Hi, how are you, FARAH? Thank you so much for coming down with us today.
Thank you.
As what Nabil has actually declared you being one of the taxists. We're wrong in saying that, right? There's no such word, right?
That's the first time I've heard of the word taxist.
I have
but
to say,
I kind of like that. It's quite...
You kind of like it?
It's quite funky.
Okay.
Even though Farah likes it, but please don't use it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that's the correct term. But let's move on to our first question, Farah. Obviously, I touched a bit about how the budget is centered around the pandemic. The 23 billion went out to the COVID fund last year. So is there going to be any different this year, Farah? What do you think?
Yeah, very good question. So when Budget 2022 was announced, the economy wasn't open yet. It wasn't fully open yet. No one knew what was going to happen, except for everyone was looking forward to be out and about again. And businesses were excited. I mean, they need to open up again. And it was really moving towards the recovery phase. Fast forward now, Budget 2023. Economy has opened up mostly, except for maybe China and some parts of the world. People are already traveling, businesses are already up and moving, and there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope that the economy will be able to pick up again. People would be able to be employed fully. And I would think then that some of the area of focus that Budget 2023 should be looking at would be perhaps in the area of supporting businesses to allow them to be able to pick up back from the situation that they were in during the COVID-19 pandemic situation, as well as giving employment. And the other bit that I would like to touch is on skilling, upskilling, reskilling of people, because business industry needs is quite different now. And Nabil, you mentioned of Budget 2022, the allocation was it was total 322 billion, and it was the largest. You're right, and quite a big chunk of that goes to operating expenditure. 233 billion went to operating expenditure, 75 billion went to development expenditure, and this is just my view. Quite a bit of that development expenditure needs to be monitored and needs to be looked at, because sometimes we announce budget, but we need to look back and see how was the execution, how was the implementation. And Budget 2023 should look at the good ones that we've done and probably the ones that needs a little bit more of tweaking, that needs to be probably relooked, and corrective measures should be taken on those areas.
And as mentioned by our finance minister, the theme of this year's budget, he has mentioned that the government will enhance 4 key areas in the year 2023 federal budget, mainly governance, public sector service delivery, disaster risk management, as well as strengthening the resilience of public health. Again, public health is still an important case right now due to the fact that we are very much in the transitional phase of the endemic. We're not there yet, but still a lot of allocation needs to, a lot of preparation. And preparation means money, and money needs to come from somewhere. Hence why we're having this chat about budget and where should each allocation goes. Now, to make it a bit broader, I just want to ask your opinion, Farah, in regards of budget itself. Not many young Malaysians actually care about the budget. I mean, like, when I say young Malaysians, I mean the ones who are, in their early 20s, like 23, 24, they might or still be in college, or they just wanted to start a new business. They might not really care as much. All they know is that, oh, government raised the prices. Oh, government is enforcing this. Oh, I'm not making as much money. Now, why do you think that it is important, not just for business owners of financial institutions out there to know about budget, but youngsters as well, to your opinion?
Yeah. So I feel when I look at how it is being a taxist, as what
you're going to be quoted that every day now.
Yep. I regret saying that word.
I think the awareness and the ability to understand what is budget really and how it impacts the people on the street is a lot better now. In the past, perhaps I've been in this profession 20 years now. When you ask me, and I realized that it wasn't people on the street were not so excited. Probably it's just a tax people or the taxis are the ones who are actually more interested. We work all night just reading through the budget speech and coming out with the positions and what does it mean to the businesses and to the people. But these days, like what I've seen earlier, people on the street, they are very excited and they want to know how does this impact. But actually, budget is, if I sum it very simply, is just a sum of the total income and expenditure. It's just like when I do my own budget at home, how much is my income and how much do I need to spend on, and what is it that the country needs to achieve. And it looks at how much revenue the country will be making or can make, and how much expenditure that's needed for the development of the country, for the infrastructure development, for the operating expenditure, the spending of the government, as well as what other projects that they need to actually launch or introduce to help the growth of the economy as well as industry sector. So it is important for people to know what is it in for them, because at the end of the day, you spoke, Mio, about education, about healthcare. And if the allocation is being put there, it shows that the government is really looking at areas to improve education. And that means future generation and future skills that's needed for the country. Allocation is put into healthcare. And, you know, we came from a situation of pandemic, and we all know that healthcare and, you know, the healthcare professionals' welfare also needs to be looked at. Yep. So in a way, budget, actually it's not in a way, it is. Budget is actually looking at where should the allocation of the spending go to, and if the spend is going to certain type of expenditure, certain projects, what would be I would call it a multiplier effect to the country, right? In terms of employment, in terms of growth of industry, in terms of digitalization, in terms of the whole works that we all the buzzwords that we've all heard.
And it should all be for the goodness of the Rakyat, a
Definitely.
Rakyat-centric budget. That's
Definitely.
what we want.
Yeah.
And I think regarding the awareness, I think the younger generation, they are more aware of the government's actions and reactions. At the same time, there are multiple posts and also Instagram accounts that actually summarizes budgets in previous years. So that's why I feel like the newer generation, including myself, are more aware of budgets this time around, which is a good thing, and we love that. Okay, let's go back to the budget. A total of 14.2 billion were made available to SMEs last year. And actually, we met some of the business owners in our Sweet Tooth segments in Fresh Brew, and some of them actually thrived during the pandemic. But obviously, at the same time, we see a lot of businesses closed doors during the pandemic and also after the pandemic. So maybe we can touch a bit about that. What do you think the government will implement in regards of taxation around SMEs, and what should be fair towards both business owners and the country? Yeah, where's the line drawn?
Yeah, if you talk about tax, I can go all day long talking about tax.
Of course.
I don't think you want on a Sunday morning, so I'll save the Sunday. But if I just say how would tax help SMEs? One area would be in the area of labour, shortage of labour. In the current situation, I've heard many of my clients, my friends, who are saying then that they are really short of the right skills for the industry. So perhaps from a tax perspective, any cost to train, or any even salary cost to train certain skills as required for the industry, that can be given a tax deduction, a double tax deduction. So meaning if you spend 1,000 ringgit, you get 2,000 ringgit to be deducted off against the profits of the company, which means you pay lesser taxes. The other bit is also training costs. Training costs where a certain group of people is needed to support the businesses. The training cost is given a further relief. It can be in the form of double deduction as well. The other bit is in terms of cost of buying machinery. And we talk about automation, where SMEs are asked to actually automate their business so that they don't have too much reliance on labour, which is known to be a shortage and all that.
Yes.
So perhaps support to actually provide accelerated capital allowance. I do not want to talk about all this taxes terminology, but I just can't help it. It's just the mouth of a tax person, and that means then that if you spend R1 billion, for example, on the equipment, you get extra deduction on the cost of the equipment, which means and then if the company is profitable, you don't need to pay as much taxes based on the profits of the company. So those are some of the areas that perhaps tax can come in to actually support the SMEs during this difficult time. But you're right, there are also some businesses who are thriving, and I've heard, and a lot of people who've moved on to the gig economy, and that's probably a channel for them to actually move away. But then again, the tax reliefs or deductions will certainly help the SMEs.
Exactly, and pertaining to what you have just answered or what you have just responded, just want to share with all of you, there was a survey being done by the SME Samantha Affin survey on business conditions and economy outlooks for SMEs 2022-2023, and he has said that 63% have cash reserve or less than 4 months, and 26% reported a revenue decline of 11 to 30%, and the reintroduction of the GST was favoured actually by 47% of respondents, while 25% are uncertain. Your comments on these overwhelming numbers that has been shared by the SMEs?
Yeah. Yes, the talk of GST being introduced has been spoken about, but we're also cautious of the escalating price. Everyone's on the streets talking about price. Even I myself, every time I go to the supermarket week on week, I notice the price of goods have gone up.
Yes.
GST is actually a broad-based consumption tax, and it's actually a good tax, provided that it's implemented correctly and the execution of it is being done in accordance with the rules and regulations, as well as there's better understanding by the businesses and the people on the street. So, I mean, if you look at GST specifically, it should not increase the price of goods, because you'll be able to claim back some of the input tax. They call it input tax. I'll spare you from all those details again, but you'll be able. So if you are being taxed at 6%, for example, which is a GST rate, businesses should be able to claim back the 6% that's been imposed on them on the purchase of their own raw materials and equipments and all that. So net, it should zero rise. So
it should level out, right?
It should level out, provided that input tax is being given timely. Because if input tax is not being given timely, there will be cost to the business that they have to carry on for the next 3 to 6 months, which means they have to borrow money to pay that tax, right? I mean, I'm just putting it laymanly, that's how it is. And to the SMEs, perhaps the cost to run the business is very important, because if they are not able to collect quick enough, they're not able to cover the cost of their business, they'll be out of pocket, and cash flow is a very important aspect as well.
Of course. And before this segment started, we saw some videos of interviews with the Rakyat, and some of them mentioned quite a bit about OPR.
Yeah.
So many have expressed a bit of dissatisfaction towards how it is being done. For the sake of SME survival, what would be your recommendation in terms of about OPR and how it's being run right now?
Yeah. You're right, Nabil. The overnight policy rate, OPR, has increased. The first time it went up, if I'm not mistaken, was in June, from 1.75 to 2%. It's gone up again it was in May, and then in June it went up to 2.25, and then recently it went up to 2.5, which means the cost of borrowing will be more expensive. Yep. And when the cost of borrowing is expensive, we all know then that for all of us, the biggest cost is the cost of your mortgage, your house, and maybe a car, because you need the car to move around, and that would comprise a significant chunk of the spending or the expenditure that a person has. And for businesses, the cost of financing. Right? So that means then when they borrow money as well, instead of having to pay a certain X number of interest, because of the OPR that has gone up, the cost of financing has gone up. But this is actually a very delicate situation. It's a balancing act, because there is a reason why the interest rate has gone up, to probably slow down the economy a little bit, because if the economy is too rancak, for example, it's just too fast, there will be a lot of demand on supplies. There will be a lot of demand on goods. And we all know the geopolitical situation, with businesses, supplies, with the drought that we hear, supplies are also being impacted. So we are not able to bring in as much goods to support the economy. And when that happens, there will be a constraint on raw materials, constraint of supplies, which then means that the cost of goods will go up. So it's a basic economics term, more demand, higher cost. Right? So the OPR rate is actually, I would say, is a balancing act. You need to have a fine balance, because there is really a constraint on supplies, and the geopolitical situation that we have is really not helping.
It's a crazy balancing act,
Yep.
isn't it? Because it's you don't know. I mean, somebody's gonna lose and somebody's gonna win, but at the same time, some other people is gonna lose, some other people is gonna win.
Yep,
right.
exactly. But whatever it is, there's a lot more of this budget talk. Just stay tuned to RTM. There's a lot more that we want to share with you. But obviously, we do want to thank our guests over here, Ms. FARAH ROSLEY, Malaysia Tax Leader, ERNST and Young Tax Consultants. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you for explaining everything in layman's terms.
Yep.
I know a lot more about tax now.